Muchas gracias, Maricruz. Finalmente pasamos a la última comunicación del día con Davis Arai. Ella es fundadora y directora de Transgender Trend, la principal organización de Reino Unido que reclama una atención sanitaria basada en datos científicos para niños, niñas y adolescentes con disforia de género, así como educación basada en datos objetivos. Es una experta conferenciante sobre crianza, feminismo y las llamadas infancias transgénero. Intervino en los juicios de Keira Bell, una de transicionadora, y de la señora A, la madre de una niña de 15 años, y fue determinante, denunciando que las niñas y niños menores no tienen suficiente capacidad como para dar su consentimiento al tratamiento para transicionar. Estos juicios resultaron ser un hito contra el Servicio de Desarrollo de la Identidad de Género Davies-Arai. Hoy nos presenta su comunicación titulada Actualización de la situación en el Reino Unido después del informe Cass.
Hello. 2025 was a very mixed year in the UK. We had a big victory for women and girls, but a huge setback for children. The biggest win was last April, with the For Women Scotland versus Scottish Government Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court judgment was that sex in the Equality Act 2010 refers to biological sex, not sex changed by a gender recognition certificate, and that the words man and woman have their biological meanings. The Sun newspaper headlined with "The Joy of Sex." The biggest setback was the announcement that the proposed puberty blocker trial had been given ethical approval and was due to start recruiting in January this year. Although it was a recommendation in the Cass review, it has been prioritised over more urgent recommendations, such as following up the 2,000 children who are already given puberty blockers. So the Supreme Court, the judgment did not change the law. It confirmed that sex has always meant sex in the Equality Act since 2010. This law protects women's single-sex spaces, such as toilets, changing rooms, hospital wards, prisons, and women-only services, such as rape counselling and women's refuges. In December, the Labour government declared violence against women and girls, VAWG, a national emergency and announced its landmark national VAWG strategy. Yet Labour has stalled on the Supreme Court ruling which protects women and girls by female-only provision of services. The ruling is the law, but many public organisations are ignoring it. They claim to be waiting for the new code of practice from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC, which advises service providers on lawful policies. The EHRC gave this to Bridget Phillipson, the Equalities Minister, who must then lay it before Parliament. She's not yet done so. Meanwhile, service providers continue to break the law. Phillipson is also Education Secretary and hadn't published the guidance for schools, which was very late. One of the worst offenders is the NHS, the National Health Service. There have been two prominent legal cases. The first was Sandy Peggy, a nurse in Scotland who objected to sharing a changing room with a man, Dr. Beth Upton. Sandy Peggy partly won her case against NHS 5. The second case was the Darlington Nurses, a group of women in the north of England who were forced to share a changing room with a man, Dr. Rose Henderson. They won their employment tribunal against County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust. Women continue to have to fight for their existing rights. The puberty blocker trial. Regarding the puberty blocker trial, Health Secretary Wes Streeting is backing the trial, but has confessed to feeling uncomfortable about it. There has been an outpouring of public opposition. There is an ongoing legal challenge to the trial. A petition reached over 140,000 signatures in just a few days. A petition which reaches over 100,000 signatures must be debated in Parliament. We commissioned a public poll which found that 63% of the public agree that the trial should be stopped, including 59% of Labour voters. 67% agreed that puberty blockers should never be given to children under 18. A Stop the Puberty Blocker trial protest in London in December had a huge turnout, including cross-party MPs who spoke and delivered a letter to Wes Streeting. A public protest in January in Manchester also attracted a huge crowd, and we spoke at both meetings. Many MPs from all parties have signed letters, made videos, and protested against the puberty blocker trial. This is independent MP Rosie Duffield with detransitioner Keira Bell, who was invited to speak in Parliament and meet the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. Next is Conservative MP Claire Coutinho, and on the right, Labour MP Jonathan Hinder with Keira Bell. Over 350 medical professionals have also written to Wes Streeting to oppose the trial. 2 articles have been published in the British Medical Journal and attracted responses from a number of health professionals, all of them critical of the trial. So 2026 will be a big year for campaigners for women's rights and child safeguarding in the UK. Our challenge is greater with a Labour government in power, with a historic record on centering trans demands over women's and children's rights and safety. 2025 showed us that big victories are possible, but also that we can't be complacent. Gender identity ideology is so embedded in institutions like the NHS and the unions, including the teaching union, that we still have much work to do. Our focus this year is on schools, to stop the indoctrination of children and to end the school-to-clinic pipeline. Last year, we published our new children's picture book for girls, Granny's Flag. The aim is to strengthen girls' identity and connection to the line of women in their families and to let them know they have a flag just for girls. They don't need a gender identity flag. We've published 2 other books for children, My Body is Me and Sex and Gender, in an introductory guide suitable for autistic children. We need to replace all the transgender books in schools and libraries. Unless the teaching of gender identity and social transition of children in schools is stopped, we'll continue to see more children who believe they need to medically change their bodies to be their authentic selves. As gender identity policies throughout society put women and girls at risk, gender identity teaching in the classroom disproportionately affects teenage girls. This is a new form of violence against women and girls, violence against the female body, and throughout society, the eradication of women as a distinct class of human beings. And we know the British public is on our side. But after writing this talk, the Labour government has at last published new draft schools guidance. Although it mandates separate sex, toilets, changing rooms and overnight accommodation, there are some loopholes. The biggest change from the previous government's draft guidance is that it allows social transition in primary schools, even though it says this should be very rare. The most worrying thing about this is that the guidance forms part of the government's statutory safeguarding guidance, keeping children safe in education, when social transition itself is a serious safeguarding concern. There is a public consultation, and we hope the public will be as outraged by this as we are. We've already instructed a lawyer pending publication of the final guidance. And just to end on some good news, last night we heard that the puberty blocker trial has been paused. So currently we're celebrating.